Hello and welcome. This morning, I want to introduce my guest, Ria Dark. Ria is a mental health clinician and she's a blooming pandemic psychic expert. So I am so excited to have you. Ria is going to be one of the speakers at the Global Workplace Wellness Summit. And I want to give Ria an opportunity to introduce herself and share with you a little bit about her and her work. Ria, welcome.
Thank you, Joyce, so much for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to your illustrious panel and being able to be one of the speakers at your event. So I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to take a listen to, who is going to be there to provide you with what you need to be able to have a healthy workplace, talking about mental health in the workplace. So, as a clinician and as a substance abuse professional for the Department of Transportation, and as a mental health first aid instructor, I've been given a lot of assignments in terms of people having this need to, deal with how we're going to deal in a post-pandemic environment. How are we going to get over pandemic roadblocks? What are some of the unique impacts that a pathogen that we're experiencing here today has on people's stress levels and their ability to cope and their psychological immunity? So I've kind of emerged, as Joyce had mentioned, I've emerged as someone who has been creating a lot of that content, providing CEUs as well, in helping dealing with addiction within that framework, helping deal with mental health within that framework, having to deal with developing resiliency in our new reality. So that's primarily where my most current projects have been lying, is really helping people think about virtuous cycles and being able to get through this and being able to do it by helping others around us as well and being of service.
Amazing work, Ria. Thank you so much for sharing that. And as you talk about how people are dealing with the pandemic, I'm curious, what are some trends you're seeing in the workplace right now as people think about wellness with the pandemic, with a lot of the different issues that we're facing right now?
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I've seen is, obviously there's a lot of stress. And so we have a lot of managers and HR representatives who want to figure out ways, how can I best support my employees now that a lot of them are coming back to work? A lot of them might want to choose to stay home. And so what the issue is, the main issue is that what we're seeing is we have a continuum of individuals. On the one end of the continuum, we have people who don't feel safe enough to come back. And on the other end of the continuum, we have people who feel as if their rights are being taken away by these new policies and procedures. And so how can we get everyone to work together to accept these policies, procedures, overcome any roadblocks that they might have by utilizing their EAP, by making sure that they get support and resources, eliminating any stigma that there might be around reaching out for those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And also just making sure that we also let people understand we still have to provide a service. We still have to move forward. Other people count on some of the infrastructures that have been shaken. It's something that I refer to as communal suffering. Communal suffering is, as a society, as a community, we depend on certain institutions, the institution of education, healthcare, our workplaces, the economy, and all of these things have destabilized in this post-pandemic world. So how do we address these issues while getting people back to work? We're also experiencing collective grief, right? It's one thing to have grief, but it's another thing to have it, and everyone around you is universally experiencing losses, whether they're feeling loss of safety or loss of freedom, whether they're experiencing loss of loved ones, loss of finances, loss of job stability. I know that I've been doing a lot of trainings, very sadly, where people need me to help prepare the fact that there's going to be a reduction in the workforces. Where people are testing positive, that their coworkers, how can we deal with that? So certainly we are looking at the trends. Obviously, we're trying to get our ways to best manage, employees to get back to work, to feel good about it, how to have those conversations, how to manage that stress, how to think about worry in a very unproductive way, how to develop psychological immunity and knowledge immunity. For me, knowledge immunity means being able to step away from some of those news cycles and certainly social media. So, that's a large part of the work that I've been doing, is dealing with addiction, resiliency, and mental health in the workplace, and how to, address those concerns as we move forward into this new reality, and how we can best meet the needs of our employees, and understanding the unique stress responses that an outbreak might have. And so, one of the things that I helped do in this, trend towards trying to provide this service, I talk about a lot of the other moments in history where we experience these things, maybe not to the degree we're experiencing it now, because of course social media plays a large role in a lot of that messaging. We went through this with the terrorist attacks, September 11th in 2001. We went through this when we had massive shootings in our children's schools and in public spaces. We went through this with West Nile. We went through this with the Zika virus. We went through this with H1N1, Ebola. We've been through a lot of these things. So helping people understand, to kind of frame it in a way to help employees move forward is what I've been working on, and some of the trends that I've been seeing.
Wow, this is amazing. One of the tracks we have at the Global Workplace Wellness Summit, the first 2 days of the summit, we have what we call roundtables. And as I hear you speak, I've been smiling inside, because what we're asking organizations to do, unlike other conferences where they say, leave your problems behind and, come off and get away from, we're inviting organizations to bring their challenges to the roundtable on November 10th and November 11th. The November 10th, we're going to be focusing on what is that wellness competency? How can we build that as a structure within the organization? And part of that, when we think of wellness competencies, we think of integrity, we think of interdependence, we think of engagement. Those are very important. Responsible communication, so very critical. And I love to see that you're already thinking ahead about that, because this is an opportunity where leaders can sit down and say, this is what I'm challenged with. This is what I'm facing. And what are some strategies? What are some best practices? How can I put this? And I think that's what I hear so much from them. It's, from an interpersonal wellness perspective, is how can I put this so that it goes over palatable? People are able to accept it, understand it, and be able to move forward and take action.
Right. And I do remember that was one of the reasons why I was so honored when, you accepted and you asked me to speak, was I did love the fact that you had that change in how normally we tell people, okay, let's escape, let's go here, let's do all this. I love the fact that you said, let's bring it here, let's actively work on this, let's problem solve, let's get some solutions before you leave from here. It's one of the things that really drew me to what you're doing, Joyce. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Ria. I think it's important. And we keep hearing that from summit attendees over the years, that this was so impactful. It is exactly what I needed. And we need to create an atmosphere where people can come and get what they need. We can speak about the real issues and not dance around it, because at the end of the day, you go back to your office and those problems are there. And most of the challenges we see that come up as complaints, as harassment, as bullying, is the inability to deal with the problems that are facing. Because as humans, we're very diverse, very complex, and so many things come up in a workplace. And as leaders, we need to have a safe place to have those conversations, see what others are doing, understand best practices, hear from experts, so we can go back and say, aha, I know I'm not the only one facing this. I know my organization is not the only one facing this. And we are on the journey for wellness, because your organization doesn't get well and then all of a sudden you're well. It's a journey. It's a continuous process of building capacity, developing your people, enhancing the quality of conversations.
Creating a corporate culture. Absolutely.
Yeah, because culture is sustained. You have to sustain that culture. And really, really enjoy that you're already talking about that. So I'm excited. When you think of some of the major HR concerns and that managers related to you, what are you seeing post-pandemic that's really impacting the workplace more so than you had seen in the past? And I know you talk about some of the new things that they're facing, but what are some things that are new and different?
I think if we're looking at it from the point of view of an HR representative, right, it's what they're trying to do, something that we've never experienced before. So they don't have a playbook. Everything is uncertain. And one of the major challenges is everything's so rapidly changing. So one day something's going to look this way, and then 5 days later they may have to rescind that, they might have to add on, they might have to, and then it's really difficult to deal with employees and then not moving engaged employees to becoming actively disengaged employees. So it's really a challenge for them because they're trying to do their very best.
Yes.
They're being given directives and they don't know, there's no playbook, how to communicate this, what works. I mean, they're probably going to make mistakes. So there's a lot of fear there as well. So, trying to help them get that messaging out is a large part of what HR people need to be able to do, is help, employees understand, I understand that you're challenged. I get it. You're validated. We're all in this together. I'm doing the best that I can do. But one of the other things that I've been telling HR managers is to start to really lean much more heavily on their employee assistance programs. And even some, like I did a seminar for, I don't know if I'm allowed to name companies or not, but a large company, Pfizer, and they've rebranded their EAP to call it EFAP, Employee and Family Assistance Programs, because it's so important to address the whole system and to really make sure that we are not just extending our services to this one individual, to every single member of their household, because, maybe I'm dealing with anxiety, but maybe my teen is dealing with a loss of social connections, and maybe my significant other has lost her parents. Maybe my older adult child has lost their job. There's so much going on. So what really have been working with EAP is, giving them the support that they need as well. But also, to have them lean more heavily on resources that they have available to them, to try to develop messaging to help elicit the buy-in from employees and make sure that they're giving a lot of information. Employees need that information. So take the time to invest on the front end, how we can build those bridges, open those lines of communications, eliminate any stigma around the mental health or being challenged at being able to come back to work and dealing with depression, anxiety, possibly even homicidal, suicidal thoughts, and also, we also have a whole layer of social unrest right now and outrage. So there's so much that they're dealing with, being able to give them resources, give them the language, give them the confidence is something that I think is very important, because they're going to play a big role in how successful businesses will be in getting back to business, and understanding too, we're not going back to the old normal. That's gone. That's never happening again. But we need to take a look at that new normal. But also, when HR people can kind of frame it towards, in history, we've been through a lot of these things before, and it doesn't mean that we're blasé about it, and it doesn't mean we're not taking it seriously, and it doesn't mean we're not accepting the reality of it, but we do know that we need to continue to march forward and really be more critical of how we spend our time worrying, thinking, looking at alarmist headlines, because it's not because the media is any different now than they were before. The media always said, if it bleeds, it leads. Always. It's always been that way. It is their job to get you to go, what's going on? What is this? And in the past, it was subscriptions to newspapers. Now it's click, click, click. Every click is more advertising dollars. It's data that they can sell. That's their job. We have to really look at some of these things. One of the things that I said to a transit company earlier today, actually, was, I myself was planning on visiting my father in Greece next month. It's still June, July 29th. And of course, almost everyone has seen breaking news, because every 5 minutes there's breaking news that, Americans are going to be banned from the European Union. But if you really read in there, and once you get past those first two paragraphs and you really look at it, it says, it's not mandatory, it's a recommendation. And they're going to reevaluate it in 2 weeks. So while other people might freak out and start calling people and getting mad and calling the airlines and spending themselves in a vicious cycle, we really need to start thinking about things differently, and stepping away from some of that messaging, which doesn't allow us to think with our frontal lobe, because we're operating out of fear and danger and anxiety. So we really need to talk to people about how to develop some of that psychological immunity as well.
That is so important. And one of the things we talk about with wellness competency, the mindset teaching, is self-mastery. Mm-hmm. And recognizing that emotions are going to be based on your thoughts or on the things that are external to you, and you're not your emotion. And you're so correct. We have to give people the language. They do not have it. And it's sad, because a lot of times HR will say, well, they need to behave like adults. And unfortunately, not everyone who comes into the workplace have adult skills or adult emotional development or mental, stability. And so we have to recognize that employees are coming from very different places.
Yep.
And wellness has to be multidimensional. You can't have a yoga program and then you have people fighting and bullying and harassing each other down the hall. That is you. That is disconfirming information. Now you can't have that happening. You have to think of wellness very holistically. You have to think about wellness from people's mindset to their behavior, the interactions, the way they form meaning of what happens, the policies you put out, the information, the rules and procedures in the organization. All of that contributes to wellness, and organizations have to start thinking about wellness so differently. So I'm sort of curious, as you speak to organizations, when you reach out to new organization or current organizations, client organizations reach out to you, how are you messaging it post COVID-19? Well, we're not post yet, through COVID-19. And I think a lot of people have gotten in their mind that we're post. We're not post. It is still here with us. It's a matter of understanding how can we live with it. That's our job as humans, is to find out how we live. So what are you messaging to them in terms of what they need to think about and what they need to do differently now that we've gone through such a traumatic global pandemic, which we've never experienced before? How will workplace wellness be different moving forward?
So, I think that one of the things that maybe, as I try to reach out and try to help people start to think about some of this programming is, it's important when we're talking about when I say post-pandemic, what I mean is like the pandemic is here and we're in a new reality kind of thing, but I know exactly what you're talking about. One of the things I think businesses took a second for them to figure it out, but they figured it out now, is that we can do a lot of work virtually, a lot. And so, I'm sure you have experiences and I have experiences as a provider. We need to talk about, we can get CEUs now virtually. We weren't able to do that before. We can speak to a lot more employees now since we have that available. We can have employees really talk. I mean, we can have speakers like myself talk about resources that they have available to them. Like, one of the other agencies that I was working with, they were asking like, how do I find out about COVID? And I was like, there are resources every single day at the county level, at the state level, at, the federal level. It happens all the time. You can at the very top of their website, helping them see that, you also need to start thinking about developing that content. And people, once they got the message and they saw how many attendees were coming and how many people were still requesting it and how many gaps there were, I think that after the initial thing, like, oh, we can still do this, then it just really became this kind of like crashing down waterfall, like of requests. And, the other thing too, I think was important for me to impart is exactly what we talked about earlier. We have to give them that language. We have to arm them with those skills. We have to give them something to work with because there is no playbook. So, making sure that, they understand that we are here for them. But also, I've also done a lot with mental health ambassadors, people who are clinicians, people who are doing direct service. They're trying to figure out how that they can bolster and support, and they need to understand the unique stressors of an outbreak, and they need to understand language like communal suffering, collective grief, and moral injury. So many people are doing things that go against what their values are. And, there's a lot of shame and guilt involved with that. And just really working towards, understanding that some people are going to be challenged. Some people, it's bigger than them. We need to create a corporate culture. We need to create an environment where it's safe to ask for help, that some short bursts of flexibility and allowances will be there. In the end, of course, we are going to ask employees to fulfill their obligations, but we have to do it with compassion, and we have to do it in a way where we create the language where it has that impact. And really, again, leaning heavily on that EAP because they're ready. I'm telling you, I've been training them too. They're ready. And there's so many providers out there who are ready, because we know that we are the new front line. We are going to be providing a different kind of health value, and that mental health value, directly impacts physical immunity, which we all know we also need in a pathogen world, in a pandemic world. We all need that.
Yes, that is so true, because one of the things I think sometimes people forget is that everything will show up on a physical level, but our relationships, the way we interact in the workplace, is what people take home with them. It's people, in the 25 years I've been consulting as a conflict analyst, I have never had anyone who said, my job is killing me. It's like the people at work, and because they say the work doesn't talk back to me. The work doesn't create a negative atmosphere.
Right.
I can do the work if I have the right support, if I have the right,
Mm-hmm.
if I feel valued, if I feel that I can pace myself. And even
Mm-hmm.
those who are overworked and burnt out is because there is a sense that they cannot pace themselves differently, or
Right.
they're not being given permission to take breaks, or
Right.
to shorten or be flexible in their schedule,
Mm-hmm.
or have the consideration from those above
Mm-hmm.
to make the workload lighter. It does come down to interpersonal, and what we do at Interpersonal Wellness and the Global Workplace Wellness is to create more attention to that, so we can have happier workplace environments at the end of the day. That's what we
Right.
want to ensure.
Right. And the average person does spend a large part of their waking life at work, if not the most of their waking life at work. And it does directly impact everything else that we have going on. And if we have low morale, and we have people who don't feel good about coming to work, and they don't feel supported, and they feel like there's going to be conflict, that's a health issue. That's a health burden, which also impacts the productivity, which also impacts, insurance claims. And that's why, insurance providers have created such a robust EAP program, because every dollar they put into prevention dollars is 3 to 5 that they save in claims. So it's so important for businesses to understand that we do need to arm our managers and our HR. We do need to help them understand how to have those conversations, understand those unique things. Managers typically aren't hired because they have great people skills. Typically, managers are hired because they have expertise, because they have seniority, because they have network connections. And so that's also something that we need to recognize, that, they have never really received any of training like that. And now more than ever, they need to be able to make those conversations happen, to build those bridges, to create that atmosphere where people can seek help appropriately. We don't want disgruntled employees. We don't want actively disengaged employees. They're very toxic to the corporate environment. We don't want to work in a place where we have to micromanage to make sure that the productivity standards get done. We want to work in a place where other people are holding each other accountable and themselves accountable. You talked about that emotional regulation. That's so important. We need to task everyone, including managers, to hold themselves accountable for what they put out there emotionally, and have some of those cognitive shifts that you were talking about around some of the things. This employee is not trying to you're not trying to make you angry. And by the way, no one can make you angry. It's a choice, right? So no one, this person, got on my nerves. No, that's a choice. So we have to help people really bring that back to, and create this place where we're having the conversations in a productive way. And then things that are more than what we can handle, we know where we can take that to the next level and be okay with that.
Absolutely. Well said, Ria. Thank you so much for sharing your passion for workplace wellness. And I think I see the needle moving. I see the shift where people are starting to recognize the interpersonal dynamics is so key to mental health, to having people happy, to productivity. And more now than ever, we need to send that message. And I'm so excited that you're going to be part of the Global Workplace Wellness Summit, and definitely part of our roundtables. We'll be sending you some updates on that. And it really is a great opportunity for organizations to arm themselves with tools and resources for the HR, for their leaders. One of the areas we'll be talking about is leading well. We have an entire track on leaders, how to lead wellness in in this new decade of 2020 and beyond. It's a shift. It's a completely different workplace, and you cannot lead with the same skills you did in 1999.
Yes,
It doesn't
God.
work.
Yeah, no more X style of management. We've even moved from Y.
Exactly, exactly. Very exciting. Thank you so much,
Yes,
and for being here. My
thank you.
pleasure. Okay.
Hi. Thank you for joining us at Inc. My name is Rias, and I'm here with you today, as I am every week, to help build the most important brand in your life, which is